Let me ask you something you are struggling with deep down unconsciously. When I reach my 60s and beyond, who's really going to be there for me? My relatives, or something that truly lasts? You know, it's one of those heavy questions most of us don't really think about until we're staring it right in the face. Sure, family brings love and those warm connections we all crave, but here's the thing. Depending entirely on other people, even the ones closest to you, might not give you that rock-solid stability and freedom you're going to need to really live well. I learned this lesson the hard way when my own dad got sick a few years back. We all thought my brother Tom would step up and help out, but when push came to shove, he had his own financial troubles and couldn't take time off work. My sister Linda lived 3 states away with her own family problems. Suddenly, Dad was looking at us kids, expecting us to have all the answers, but none of us were really prepared for what it meant to care for an aging parent. That's when it hit me. I didn't want to put my own kids in that same impossible position someday. When you cross that 60-year mark, life throws some pretty unique curveballs and chances your way. That's when it hits you that you need to start focusing on creating something solid underneath you, something that'll keep you secure, happy, and in control of your own destiny. Today, I want to share with you 5 key things I've learned, the real building blocks that make life after 60 not just bearable, but actually amazing. These aren't just nice theories I picked up somewhere. They're real, tested ways to make sure you can stand on your own 2 feet no matter what gets thrown at you. I've seen too many people in my neighborhood who thought they had it all figured out, only to watch their plans crumble when life threw them a curveball. My neighbor Frank thought his pension would last forever, until the company went bankrupt and his monthly checks got cut in half. Another friend, Betty, assumed her kids would always live nearby, but then her son got transferred to Seattle and her daughter moved to Florida for a job. Suddenly, Betty was alone in a big house she couldn't maintain, with no family close enough to help with emergencies. So whether you're getting close to this chapter or you're already living it, stay with me. What I'm about to tell you might completely change how you see your golden years and help you build a life that's both secure and deeply satisfying. The first foundation: getting your money right. Having your finances sorted out is absolutely everything when it comes to living with dignity and security after you turn 60. What I mean by this is being able to take care of yourself without having to lean on your family or feeling like you're weighing everyone down. As we get older, those medical bills start piling up. Everyday costs keep climbing, and even the fun stuff we want to do costs money. If you don't have your own nest egg, your own investments, or some way to bring in income, you'll find yourself in those awkward spots where other people are making decisions about your life instead of you calling the shots. Let me tell you about this guy I know. Let's call him Michael. Michael was a teacher who retired in his 60s, and this man was smart about his money from day one. Throughout his whole career, he made sure to put money away, not just for emergencies but for the things that mattered to him, like traveling and his hobbies. When his kids ended up moving overseas, Michael felt proud that he could still handle everything on his own, paying his own bills and even spoiling his grandkids when they came to visit. But here's where Michael's story gets interesting and scary. 3 years into his retirement, Michael got hit with a 1-2 punch that would have destroyed most people. First, his wife Carol got diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. The medical bills started coming in waves: specialist appointments, medications that insurance wouldn't cover, and eventually the need for specialized care that cost $4,000 a month. Around the same time, the housing market crashed in their area, and their home value dropped by 40%. Michael watched his retirement nest egg shrink faster than ice cream on a hot summer day. Most people would have panicked, maybe even had to move in with their kids or sell everything. But because Michael had been smart about diversifying his income streams, he had options. He'd been collecting rental income from a small duplex he bought years earlier, had dividend-paying stocks, and even had a small consulting side business helping other teachers with their lesson plans. When the medical bills hit, Michael was able to adjust. He sold the duplex at a loss, but used the money to cover Carol's care. He increased his consulting work and even started tutoring kids online for extra cash. The real kicker came when Michael's own health took a turn. He had a minor heart attack at 67, nothing life-threatening, but enough to require surgery and months of recovery. His insurance covered most of it, but the deductibles and out-of-pocket costs still added up to nearly $15,000. Because he'd built multiple financial safety nets, Michael could handle this too without going into debt or becoming a burden on his children. That's when I realized financial independence isn't just about having money in the bank. It's about having enough different income sources and savings that you can weather multiple storms at once. Life doesn't just throw you one problem at a time. It likes to pile them on when you're least prepared. Even if you're already retired or getting close to it, you can still work on getting financially independent. Start by sitting down and really looking at what you're spending now and what you'll probably need down the road. Find those places where you're wasting money. Maybe it's subscriptions you forgot about or fancy stuff you don't really need, and move that money into savings instead. Think about setting up some income streams that don't require you to work all the time, like renting out property, getting dividends from investments, or doing some part-time work that matches what you're good at. I learned this lesson myself when I was 58. I thought I was doing pretty well with my 401k and some savings, until I sat down with a financial advisor who showed me some hard truths. She pointed out that my expenses would probably go up, not down, in retirement, especially healthcare costs. That woke me up fast. I started driving for Uber on weekends, selling some of my old collectibles on eBay, and even renting out my basement to a college student. Every little bit helped build that financial cushion I needed. The second foundation: keeping your body strong. Staying healthy means staying free. It's that simple. Once you hit 60, taking care of your body becomes one of the most important things you can do to avoid having to depend on other people for basic stuff. When you make your health a priority, you're cutting down the chances of getting those long-term illnesses and injuries that can really limit what you can do. Good health means you can keep doing what you love, whether that's traveling around or just managing your own home without breaking a sweat. I've got to tell you about this amazing woman I know. We'll call her Sarah. She's 70 years old, and honestly, she's become like a legend in our neighborhood for how gracefully she's aging. Sarah has this simple routine every morning. She takes a fast 30-minute walk, does some easy yoga moves, and sits down to a breakfast packed with good stuff. Even at her age, Sarah does her own grocery shopping, cooks her own meals, and still finds time to help out at the local food bank. But Sarah's story isn't all sunshine and roses. She's had to fight for her health every step of the way. When she turned 65, Sarah got some news that would have sent most people straight to the couch with a bag of chips. Her doctor told her she was pre-diabetic, had high blood pressure, and was showing early signs of osteoporosis. Her family history wasn't good either. Her mother had died from complications of diabetes, and her father had spent his last years in a wheelchair after multiple strokes. Instead of accepting this as her fate, Sarah got mad. Not angry mad, but determined mad. She completely overhauled her lifestyle, but she did it smart. Rather than trying to change everything at once, which usually leads to failure, Sarah tackled one thing at a time. First month, she focused just on walking every day. Second month, she added the yoga. Third month, she started cooking healthier meals. By the end of the year, Sarah had lost 35 pounds. Her blood pressure was normal, and her bone density tests showed improvement. The real test came when Sarah was 68 and slipped on some ice in her driveway. She fell hard and everyone expected the worst: a broken hip, maybe months of recovery, possibly even a move to assisted living. But Sarah's years of strength training and bone-building exercises paid off. Instead of a fracture, she just had some nasty bruises and a sprained wrist. She was back to her normal routine within 2 weeks. Here's what really impressed me about Sarah's approach. She didn't try to become a fitness fanatic overnight. She worked with what she had and built slowly. When her arthritis started acting up, she switched from regular yoga to water aerobics at the community center. When her knees started bothering her on long walks, she got a stationary bike for bad weather days. Sarah adapted her routine to work with her body's changes, not against them. The wake-up call for me came when I was 59 and threw out my back moving a couch. I was laid up for 2 weeks, couldn't drive, couldn't even shower without help. My wife had to take time off work to take care of me, and I realized how quickly you can go from independent to dependent over something as simple as not staying in shape. That's when I started taking my own physical health seriously. If you're over 60, keeping yourself healthy doesn't have to be rocket science. Start with something as simple as walking every day. Just 20 to 30 minutes can do wonders for your heart and help you stay mobile. Add in some basic strength work, like lifting light weights or using those stretchy resistance bands to keep your muscles and bones strong. But here's the crucial part. Make it sustainable. Don't try to become a marathon runner if you've been sitting on the couch for 5 years. The third foundation: building mental toughness. Life after 60 usually brings some pretty big changes. Your kids might move far away, your career might be winding down, and you might find your social world getting smaller. When these moments hit, having mental toughness becomes your best friend. It's that inner strength that helps you roll with the punches, deal with feeling alone, and find calm when everything seems uncertain. Let me share the story of this guy I'll call David, a retired artist who found himself in an empty house after his children moved to different countries. At first, David really struggled with loneliness and not knowing what to do with himself. The silence in his house was deafening, and he found himself watching TV all day just to hear human voices. His wife had passed away 2 years earlier, and without the kids around, David felt like he'd lost his purpose completely. But David's real test came when he got some devastating news. His doctor found a spot on his lung during a routine checkup. For 3 weeks, David waited for test results, convinced he was going to die. During those 3 weeks, something shifted in David's mind. He realized he'd been wasting time feeling sorry for himself when he still had life to live. When the tests came back benign, just scar tissue from an old infection, David felt like he'd been given a second chance. That's when David started meditating and fell back in love with painting. But the journey wasn't smooth. Some days, the grief over his wife's death would hit him like a truck. Other days, he'd feel so lonely he'd consider selling his house and moving to a retirement community just to have people around. There were mornings when getting out of bed felt impossible, and evenings when he'd call his kids overseas just to hear their voices, even though the time difference meant waking them up. The breakthrough came when David started painting his emotions instead of trying to suppress them. He painted his grief dark, swirling canvases that captured the pain of losing his wife. He painted his loneliness, empty rooms filled with shadows and memories. And slowly, he started painting hope, sunrise scenes, flowers blooming, people connecting. Through daily mindfulness and diving deep into his art, David discovered peace and happiness that came from within. David's paintings caught the attention of a local gallery owner who was dealing with her own struggles, caring for her aging mother while running her business. She saw something in David's work that spoke to her, and she offered him a show. That first gallery opening was terrifying for David. He hadn't been around that many people in months, and he almost backed out at the last minute. But he pushed through his anxiety, and the response was incredible. My own mental toughness got tested when I lost my job at 61. The company I'd worked for 23 years decided to restructure, which was their polite way of saying they were getting rid of all the older, higher-paid employees. Suddenly, I was facing retirement earlier than planned, with less savings than I'd hoped for, and feeling completely rejected by a world that seemed to value youth over experience. The first few months were brutal. I applied for dozens of jobs and got maybe 3 interviews. Companies would be interested until they met me in person and realized I wasn't some energetic 35-year-old. I started doubting everything about myself, my skills, my worth, my future. My wife found me crying in the garage one day, just sitting there wondering what the hell I was going to do with the rest of my life. Building mental toughness is something anyone can learn to do, but it's not a straight line. Some days you'll feel strong and ready to take on the world. Other days, you'll feel like hiding under the covers. The key is developing tools and habits that help you bounce back faster from the low points. The fourth foundation: building real friendships. As we get older, friendships become incredibly valuable, but they also become harder to maintain and create. While family definitely matters in our lives, having friends outside your family brings something special to the table. The challenge is that many of the natural friendship-building opportunities we had when we were younger, work colleagues, kids' activities, neighborhood barbecues, start disappearing as we age. Let me tell you about this woman I'll call Jennifer, a retired nurse in her late 60s. After her children moved out and started their own lives, Jennifer felt like she was losing touch with the world. Her work friends were scattered, some had moved to be closer to their own grandchildren, and a few had passed away. The neighborhood had changed too. Young families had moved in, and Jennifer felt like an outsider at community events where everyone else was dealing with soccer schedules and school fundraisers. Jennifer's wake-up call came during the holidays when she realized she'd spent Christmas Day alone for the first time in her life. Her kids were with their in-laws, her siblings lived far away, and she didn't have anyone close enough to call and invite over. She sat in her living room looking at the Christmas tree she'd decorated for no one but herself, and she knew something had to change. That's when Jennifer decided to join a book club in her area. But it wasn't as easy as it sounds. The first club she tried was full of women who'd been friends for years and had inside jokes and shared history that made Jennifer feel like an outsider. She stuck it out for a few months, but never really connected. The second club was too competitive. Members seemed more interested in showing off how much they knew than actually discussing the books. The third time was the charm, but only because Jennifer had learned some hard lessons about making friends later in life. She found a club that was specifically for people who were new to the area or looking to expand their social circles. Through that book club, Jennifer didn't just discover amazing new authors. She also made close friends with people who were in similar situations. But building those friendships took real effort and some awkward moments. Jennifer invited a few club members for coffee, and one woman stood her up completely. Another potential friend turned out to be dealing with serious depression and wanted Jennifer to be her therapist more than her friend. There were misunderstandings about money, who pays for what when you go out, and different expectations about how often to get together. The breakthrough came when Jennifer met Susan, another retired healthcare worker who was dealing with similar loneliness. They started meeting for walks before book club, and those conversations became the foundation of a real friendship. Soon they were planning weekend trips together, celebrating holidays as chosen family, and providing each other with emotional support through life's ups and downs. My own friendship challenges started when I realized that most of my social connections had been work-related. When I lost my job at 61, I lost those daily interactions too. The guys I used to grab lunch with were still grinding away at the office while I was home watching daytime TV. Weekend golf games became awkward because I couldn't afford the greens fees on my reduced income, and I felt embarrassed about my situation. I had to swallow my pride and actively work at making new friends, which felt weird at my age. I joined a men's breakfast group at our church, even though I hadn't been particularly religious before. I started volunteering at the food bank, partly to help others, but honestly also because I needed somewhere to go and people to talk to. Some of these attempts failed miserably. There was one community group where I clearly didn't fit in with the established cliques. The fifth foundation: knowing your why. Having a clear sense of why you get up every morning is one of the most rewarding parts of life, no matter how old you are. After 60, it becomes especially crucial to wake up each day with something to look forward to. But finding that purpose isn't always straightforward, especially when life has taken away some of the things that used to define you. I want to share the incredible story of this man I'll call Robert, who after retiring from a long engineering career, felt completely lost without the structure and goals that work had given him. For 35 years, Robert had been the guy people came to when they needed problems solved. His days were filled with meetings, deadlines, and projects that mattered. Suddenly, he had nothing but empty hours and no one depending on his expertise. The first year of retirement was rough for Robert. He tried the typical retirement activities: golf, reading, traveling, but nothing clicked. Golf frustrated him because he wasn't naturally good at it, and he didn't enjoy struggling with something when he'd been an expert in his field for decades. Reading felt passive after years of active problem-solving. Traveling was nice, but it felt like running away from the emptiness rather than filling it with something meaningful. Robert's low point came when his former company called to ask for help with a technical problem that his replacement couldn't solve. Robert spent 3 hours on the phone walking them through the solution, and for those 3 hours, he felt like himself again. When the call ended, the silence in his house felt even more oppressive. That's when he realized he needed to find a way to use his skills and experience in a new context. The turning point came when Robert's neighbor mentioned that the local high school was struggling to find someone to help with their robotics team. The previous mentor had moved away, and the teacher running the program was overwhelmed. Robert wasn't sure he wanted to deal with teenagers, but something about the challenge appealed to him. His first day with the robotics team was a disaster. The kids were loud, disorganized, and seemed more interested in their phones than learning about engineering. Robert tried to run the session like a business meeting, and the students quickly tuned out. He went home that day convinced he'd made a mistake. But Robert's engineering mindset kicked in. He approached the mentoring challenge like a technical problem that needed solving. He researched how to communicate with teenagers, adapted his teaching style, and found ways to make the concepts relevant to their lives. Slowly, the students started responding. More importantly, Robert started looking forward to those Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. The real breakthrough came when the team entered a regional competition. Robert had worked with the students for months, helping them design and build a robot that could complete specific tasks. The day of the competition, Robert was more nervous than the kids. When their robot performed flawlessly and the team placed second overall, Robert felt a pride and satisfaction he hadn't experienced since his early career achievements. That robotics team became Robert's new mission, but it led to other opportunities too. The school asked him to help with the engineering club. A local community college recruited him to teach a night class in basic engineering principles. Robert realized he'd found something better than his old job. He was passing on his knowledge and experience to the next generation while staying engaged with the technical world he loved. My own search for purpose after losing my job was messier and took longer than Robert's story. For months, I felt like a boat without an anchor, drifting through days without any real direction. I tried volunteering at different places, but nothing felt quite right. I attempted to start a consulting business, but I struggled with the sales and marketing aspects that had never been part of my corporate job. The answer came from an unexpected place. My wife mentioned that our neighbor, an elderly widow named Mrs. Martinez, was struggling to maintain her yard since her husband passed away. I started helping her with basic lawn care and home repairs, partly because I needed something to do and partly because I felt sorry for her situation. What started as occasional help became a regular commitment, and Mrs. Martinez started referring me to other neighbors who needed similar assistance. Before I knew it, I had a small handyman business going, not enough to replace my old salary, but enough to give me purpose and some extra income. More importantly, I was helping people in my community solve real problems, which gave me the sense of being useful that I'd been missing. But finding purpose isn't just about grand gestures or major commitments. Sometimes it's about the small daily choices that add meaning to your life. I started writing letters to my grandchildren, sharing stories about our family history and lessons I'd learned. I began documenting family recipes and traditions that might otherwise be lost. These activities didn't pay any money or win any awards, but they connected me to something larger than myself. The reality check. When everything falls apart. Here's what nobody tells you about building these 5 foundations. Sometimes life comes along and kicks them all down at once. I learned this lesson the hard way when I was 63, just when I thought I had everything figured out. It started with my wife getting diagnosed with breast cancer. Suddenly, all our careful financial planning meant nothing when faced with experimental treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. Our travel fund became our medical fund. Our retirement dreams became survival mode. The stress affected both our physical health. I developed high blood pressure and stopped exercising. Our social life disappeared as we focused entirely on treatments and doctor appointments. During this crisis, I discovered which of our friendships were real and which were just social conveniences. Some people we'd known for years suddenly became unavailable when we needed help. But others stepped up in ways that surprised and humbled me. Jennifer from the book club organized meal trains. Robert from the robotics team helped me with yard work when I was too exhausted to keep up with basic maintenance. The experience taught me that these 5 foundations aren't separate pillars. They're interconnected supports that can help each other when one gets shaken. My sense of purpose shifted from career achievement to being the best caregiver and advocate I could be for my wife. My financial planning, while not perfect, gave us options that many people don't have. The physical strength I'd built helped me handle the demands of caregiving. The emotional resilience I'd developed helped me stay strong when my wife needed me to be her rock. As I've been going through life after 60, I've learned that the most dependable support doesn't just come from other people. It comes from the foundations you build for yourself. Getting your money right, staying physically strong, developing mental toughness, building real friendships, and knowing your why. But I've also learned that these foundations require constant maintenance and adjustment as life changes. The truth is, there's no perfect plan for aging. Life will throw you curveballs you never saw coming. People will disappoint you, and you'll disappoint others. Your body will betray you in ways you never expected. Your carefully laid financial plans might not account for every possibility. But if you work on building these 5 foundations, you'll have the tools to adapt and overcome whatever comes your way. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. If what I've shared resonates with you, I'd appreciate it if you'd like, share, and subscribe to Vitality today. And before you head out, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment and let me know if you're ready to work on these foundations, or if you're just starting to think about them.